Welcome back to Rookie Pastors, a podcast of casual conversations about real ministry by real pastors. My name is Josh Prince, and today I'm joined by Bryan Colley and Dustin Slayton. Fellas, good to be with you. And I want to start because we got something exciting going on the social medias. Dustin, can you share a little bit about the giveaway that's going on this month?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to any of our social medias, it's Rookie Pastors Pod on everything except for Twitter. It's just Rookie Pastors on Twitter. Go there, find our post that we posted out there on Tuesday. It's a 5-book giveaway for Pastor Appreciation Month. And so we just want you to like or follow us on social media. Tag somebody else that you think would be a good person to follow Rookie Pastors. Maybe somebody could be encouraged by that. Tag them in the comments. And then for a bonus entry, if you want to get a double entry, share that post, share that giveaway post. It launched on Tuesday. We'll close it down next Tuesday and announce our winner. And so you'll get 5 books on, most of them on pastoring, a couple of them just spiritual discipleship type books. And so go check them out and maybe you'll win.
Yeah, and we talked about adding some of these along the way, some of our favorite books, so you can be on the lookout for that too. I do want to say that I want to add something special to this giveaway based on a lot of unkind things that were said about me during episode 3, which I was not on, and so I'd like to donate my own stash of candy corn to this giveaway. That's all I'm going to say about that. I had some candy corn lovers reach out to me and let me know that they sympathize with me, that they will never go to First Baptist Church of Mason, Texas any longer, but just wanted you to know that.
That's good.
Yeah.
I found my wife at the end of Halloween, Thanksgiving season last year, she bought me some candy corn. And I found it the other day in my closet, still in the Target bag, and sitting in the bottom of my closet. But
it's probably still good.
Pretty sure that stuff has like a 10-year expiration date. Yeah. So I'm already stocked up.
It's like the apocalyptic Twinkies. It'll be fine. All right. Yeah. So today we're going to spend some time talking about family life. Well, really ministry and family life and finding that right balance. So it got me thinking back to my childhood, and I've kind of got this iconic thing in my head when I think back to my childhood, but I'm going to let you guys go first. What do you remember as like your childhood vehicle that your family drove? Like the vehicle that when you think back to your childhood stands out more than any other one?
Well, mine is easy because we were, at least for a while, we were a Jeep family. And so 1992, my parents home with a 1989 Jeep Cherokee Laredo, classic red with the gray trim on it, 4-wheel drive. And we took that thing everywhere. I don't know how many miles I rode in that back seat. Back then, and this is actually a little bit gross, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I had hair back then, and I had the flat top with the butch wax keeping it up. And I would sleep with my head up against the pillar back there in the back. And there was actually a greasy spot right there that was still there whenever I got the car when I was in college. And so it became mine in college. I drove that all the way until probably about 2006, and then parked it for a while, pulled it back out of storage to fix it up. But then when baby number 4 came along, I had to sell it. Didn't have the money or time to put into it. So anyway, sad day.
Yeah. So we've had iconic cars all throughout because we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and so you didn't get what you really wanted. We had a Ford Ranger that had a camper on the back of it that we would drive to visit family in Tennessee, and the kids would all lay in the bed inside that camper and watch TV all the way to Tennessee. Yes. Yeah, man, kids today don't know what living on the edge was. We had a minivan that I called it the A-Team van, but it was maroon with a black racing stripe instead of black with a red racing stripe. But really, the thing that I remember most about family cars was not really a family car, but sometime early 90s, we went to I grew up in the Dallas area. We went to a live remote of what's now KLTY. It was Kojo 94.9 at the time. So that's dating myself. And it was at a car dealership, and they were giving away a car And so my dad entered it, and he won a 1973 Lincoln Mark IV Continental car. Big old boat. For after tax, title, and license, it cost us $38.88, and that was going to be my first car. And then, fortunately, due to various instances, we had to sell it before I was able to turn 16, like 7 years later. But I was like, man, that would have been the best first car ever. But it was a boat, and it rode so smooth. It was so nice. So
Nice. So for us, it was the Ford Aerostar. It was such a cool sciencey looking vehicle. It was not cool. It was horrible, and like we got bad gas in it on a trip to Colorado, and it never ran the same. It was pretty tough. The only reason I really liked that vehicle was my sister and I had two different seats that we could sit in that car, so we were separated, which was probably the reason my dad wanted the vehicle to separate us out. But I remember that what the vehicle that I always wanted, not because it was cool, but because of the convenience. Y'all remember the Ford Econoline
Mhm.
vans that had like the two captain's chairs, the bed in the back that like rolled out. It came
Mhm.
with the shades on the windows. My
Oh
best
yeah.
friend in high school, junior high, he had one of those, and I was like, man, that's traveling with class right there.
mhm,
Pretty much a
Mhm.
rolling RV for the family. So, well, good
had
deal.
usually had a TV in it, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
that,
pretty
that was
awesome.
that
Yeah.
was class. That was high class.
Yeah, high class. All right, let's get into our topic today. So we're talking about family ministry life balance, and I think one of the greatest balancing acts in our pastorate is probably the ministry and family life balance. So I'll say this: a couple of things in my observation. The first is I've sensed that there's a bit of a shift in the church or in churches today that I appreciate it, and what I mean by it and what I'm seeing is it seems as though more churches have kind of increased their respect and encouragement for their pastors to have a healthy home life, to be dads that are present, to prioritize their marriage and things like that. And I think it's far from perfect, but at the same time, I sense it's a trend that's headed in the right direction. On that, though, I will say that there's still kind of the unhealthy expectation that we all are going to deal with by certain church members who I don't know if I came up with this phrase in my mind or I heard it from somewhere else, but they want their pastor to be an omni pastor, which is a pastor who knows everything, who is everywhere where he needs to be, who sees everybody. And
Mhm.
that's gonna, for the most part, I think that's always going to be a reality that we're going to face as pastors. And I'll add one more kind of cog to all this is I think that we like to blame the church for an issue of the unhealthy balance, but as pastors, I think sometimes we're our own worst enemies in this
Mm.
realm. I think we overcommit, we focus on people pleasing, we find identity in our title, we find value in our title, we face the temptation of notoriety or celebrity. And then just the reality where, as pastors, we're tempted to keep ourselves so busy to a very unhealthy degree. So, all that to
Mm.
say, I think there's a lot of hurdles that we're still dealing with to work towards finding a healthy ministry and family life balance. So, let me ask you guys, and Dustin, why don't you start with this? But why do you think developing and sustaining ministry family life balance is a challenge for pastors?
I think a big part of it is I think a lot of pastors are people pleasers. I think there's a little bit of a dynamic that's kind of a natural tendency for us. We have a tendency to want people to like us. We want to be friendly with people. We want to develop those relationships with people. And so it probably causes us to lean into being off balance towards church ministry a little bit too much. And it's hard for us at times to say no to good things because there's a there's a gazillion good things around the church that we could be involved in, and so just being able to not feel like you have to make everybody happy all the time, and say no to the things that, even though they may be good, are maybe not the best thing for the moment. I think it's a key issue there.
Yeah, what about you, Bryan? What do you think
Yeah,
is one of the causes behind it?
I think let's be. This is supposed to be real conversations and from real pastors, let's be real, our paycheck's tied to it. You want to show that you're living up to whatever salary you're making. I mean, if I was just a volunteer in the church, it'd be easy to say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
Volunteers do that all the time. But as the pastor, there is a mindset amongst some people in the church, and some churches it's more people than others, and others it's vice versa. Of, well, we're hiring you to do this, you better do it. And I think that whether that's perception or reality, it's there, and it does lend itself to wanting to justify that, whether that's just something made up in your mind or is an actual something that needs to be done. And so and I think it's different in the settings that you're in. For me, being in a rural small town, I never get to not be on. Everywhere I go turns into a ministry moment in some sense of fashion. Whereas other places that I have served on staff, I could go 6 months and never run into anybody from my church in the community, just because it was such a large. But everywhere I go now, it is that. And so I think it's very important to set clear expectations from the beginning. But if you're already far enough in that you're not really at the beginning, to just pull back to the church and be honest and say, my first primary ministry is my family. I'm always going to have them. God might call me somewhere else, but I'm always going to have my family, and I have to take care of them first. And so, and just be very clear. And then to sustain it, you set up some, we're going to talk about this in a minute, some guardrails, some things that, you lean on other leadership in your church to take the reins on some of those things.
Yeah. Well, and I think y'all hit on two things for me are kind of the big deals. Is one aspect of it is, I mean, our paycheck's tied to it. I would say our identity is tied to it. Is one of the things I struggle with a lot. And the other side is the aspect of I don't get to turn off being a pastor. And if I do turn off being a pastor, then am I how legitimate is it? I saw this hot take. This guy said the Western church should stop paying pastors for a year and see how many of them stick it out. Like, if you did that with any industry, I don't get that philosophy, but there is a reality. Like, I don't get to turn off being a pastor. I had a conversation with somebody that I truly love and respect. And that was kind of the suggestion to me was, hey, don't go in there and be their pastor. Well, who else am I supposed to be? That's who God crafted me to be. That's who God designed me to be. That's who God called me to be. I don't get to turn that off. I'd love to turn it off. My life probably be a little bit easier if I could turn that aspect off, but it's who God made me to be. But I think that, one of the things I've always struggled with in ministry is how much of my identity is tied to what I do, the title I own as a pastor. And so I've got to learn, like with my kids, I am my kid's pastor, but more importantly, I'm my kid's dad. I'm my wife's pastor, which is weird, but probably weirder for her than it is for me.
How often do you remind her of that?
Yeah. Listen here. Don't make me bring you in for church discipline. But it is that aspect of like, I'm always going to be that. Like, I get to be their pastor. It's a privilege, but I also, more importantly, as Bryan, you were saying, like, I'm my wife's husband. I'm my kid's dad. That's who they need to see me as. I get to pastor them, which is a blessing, but I've got to manage that balance pretty well. I've got to stop holding so much of who I am based on the title that I hold. And I think I perceive that I'm going to fight against that for a while.
Yeah. I do think one of the beautiful things about moving into this role later in ministry and having been on staff as my kids were really growing up, and not the lead pastor, was I haven't always been their pastor, but I've always been their dad. And part of the reason that I felt being led out of student ministry, and my kids fully know this, we've had this conversation, was I sat back and said, am I who I would want to have my kids as their student pastor?
Hmm.
And I wasn't at that point. And so they've seen me in that sense protecting them. And so now, and in this role, there's been moments that one of my kids has been like, why do we always have to talk about church? Why do we have to do that? But they recognize that that's our life. That's who we are, as frustrating as it is. But I'm still dad, and I will stop and talk and be dad over being pastor to them.
Yeah.
And so it's been a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Well, Bryan,
And
you
I think it's
alluded to this.
especially probably
Sorry, go ahead.
hard. I think it's probably especially hard for guys. There's probably a lot of guys that are listening to bivocational. And like you were saying, Josh, you can't turn off being a pastor. There's no such thing as a part-time pastor. There's only pastors with part-time pay. And for those guys especially, I think it's difficult because they're trying to balance not just work and family life, but also an additional job with that. And so it's a challenge that is unique for every person. I think one thing that is challenging for me at times, my wife has to remind me of this, is that my job is not a 9 to 5. Being the pastor is not a 9 to 5 job. My car does not have to be in the parking lot from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock every day, because what the folks don't see is the phone calls in the evening, the visits in the evening, the Saturdays, doing a funeral, doing a wedding, those kinds of things. That it's just not a 9 to 5 type experience, and it's probably especially more difficult for somebody like Bryan, small town, because everybody drives by the church every day. They see if your car's there or not. But I guess being able to release those expectations to the Lord and just be faithful to know that you're doing what He's called you to do and the way He's called you to do it is just a big challenge we've got to step into.
Yeah, for sure. So what are the guardrails? You talked about this, Bryan. So what have you found are the healthy guardrails? Maybe you want to set up, maybe you have set up. We'll speak that we're just all doing this perfectly, right? Real conversations by real pastors. We've all figured
That's
this
right.
out. That's why we're making the
Uh-huh.
podcast. But what
Yeah.
have been the guardrails that have helped you balance that?
I, I've just been very steadfast and clear. Like, I'm going to my kids' stuff. I'm going to be at my kids. My kids are most important. My wife's most important. Um, I've briefly mentioned this. I think it helps here that pretty much everywhere I go is a ministry opportunity, with church members or community members knowing who I am. And so, like, I'm going to, like, tonight. I'm about to, here in just a little while, a couple hours. I'm going to get in the car and drive 2.5 hours to a football game. But I'm going to be with church members and see community members. I'm still on, but I've just been very clear. My family comes first, and I'm going to be there for them. And knowing there's going to be times that there's some things that are unavoidable, but you just gotta be steadfast in. Before I'm your pastor, I am the leader of my household, and I'm the husband and the father to my family.
Yeah. I think that the aspect of just making sure your family knows you're choosing them, but then also, like, Jess and I had this conversation with our kids about 3 weeks ago. We were heading into a really busy season. She had some things. I just got back from a mission trip, so we had that going on, and she told the kids, like, "Hey, we're gonna have a few busy weeks, so we're gonna do something really fun together as a family before that, and then we'll do something fun as a family after that." So I think even prepping our kids for just there's grinds in ministry life. Like, there's just going to be times where you're pressing through a lot of things, and so to help the kids kind of on the forefront of all of that, I think that that's helped them a lot. But then also, like, the days I have off, I'm learning. I'm not great at this yet, but I'm learning to say, hey, that is my day off. So I'm not going to go do a ministry thing, as important as it is. I think one of the guardrails I really want to see us set up as a church is to really encourage our deacons. Like, you guys can do such a great job partnering with us as vocational ministers to go and minister to people when the hospital visit has to come up on a Friday, or there's a surgery on a Saturday morning. That they would understand how important they are to this process as well, and helping the church understand you don't need the pastor there to pray for you. I can understand, especially in, life or death situation type stuff where they want the pastor there. I respect that. I get that. And I would be there for those moments, and my family would understand that. But generally they're not life and death situations. Somebody might think that they are, they're not. So I think one of the guardrails I want to see developed for me personally is to say, hey, Friday is my day off, and that is family day. And if I can't do Friday, then Saturday is the day. Like, that's our family day. That's our time to be together. That's our day of rest. But I think the other thing is getting key leaders who can come alongside you on, to me, like the Friday things that typically pop up, or the hospital visits, or something special like that. So bringing them into the fold of saying, hey, you get to be part of this as well, a very important part of this, and imploring them and encouraging them to that. So any guardrails, Dustin, that have helped you and your family?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say honestly, I'm probably not the best at this. Uh, I do have a hard time saying no, and I just love ministry. I love things outside ministry, and then so I know one of the things that I am blessed to have a little bit of a larger staff, and so I have learned to delegate a little bit better, rather than just be like, okay, well, I can do this, or I can do this better than so and so, so I'm going to go ahead and keep it, or I want it to be done a certain way, and so just being able to release things to other staff members has been something that I've had to learn, because that frees up time, and frees up time within my normal office hours. Like next week, because we're getting away for a couple of days as a staff, and then just other things that are going on. I literally have Thursday afternoon is the only time I have in the office all day next week. And so I've even had other things come up, and I'm like, sorry, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And so for me, learning to just be willing to say no is difficult, but I've learned to do it. And then letting my kids know that, and my wife know, when I'm home, I'm home. And I try to limit discussions about church and church stuff as much as I can whenever we're at home, and try to put down my phone and not get on it. And I'm not great at that either, but you know,
That's our fault.
yeah, it honestly,
The D group
I'll have
text
to be
thread.
like, "What? Who are you texting?" I'm like, "It's my pastor's group. It's my group. It's the guys." So yeah, if y'all could just leave me alone, that'd be great. But you know, yeah, I think for me, learning to try to be present when I'm home is a big thing that I'm still working on. Um, and because even whenever I'm at home, there's always so many things to do around the house. Mow the grass, paint a room, do something. And so I don't know. I would love to. I feel like you guys kind of have a little bit more together than I do on this. But so something I'm still learning.
Let me add something on that real quick, because we're talking about us, and focused on us, and I feel like one of the hardest struggles for me is trying to protect my wife in this area, because she works full time. She works Monday through Friday, and then Sundays are a work day for her at church because she's the pastor's wife in a lot of ways. And I get Fridays off. Uh, she doesn't. So she gets a 1 day week, or 1 day weekend basically. And we're, so I'm not great at it. I'm trying to do better. I try and take care of the laundry on my days off. I try and do some things around the house so that on Saturdays it's a little bit easier for her. And because I do see that begin to weigh on her, especially in the middle of the school year. And my job as balancing ministry and family is to make sure she doesn't get burned out and she's protected in that. And so I'm really trying to work on that.
If I could just,
Yeah.
And I know that probably parlays to bivocational pastors really well as
Yeah.
well. So
I would say a practical thing, that has helped me a lot, and this kind of grew out of, so last spring semester, or last January to May, I was being the pastor. I was helping coach my son's track team. I was teaching an in-person class at Howard Payne in New Braunfels, which is an hour away from here, and I was teaching an online class, and I was volunteering every other week at our local pregnancy resource center. And I realized very quickly I had bit off more than I could chew, and so I had to find some margin in there. But what grew out of that is I tried to, at the beginning of each week, plan plan each day to make sure that I can get in what I need to get done, and find those things that I have to eliminate in order to be like, sorry, that's just going to have to wait till next week. So like I was trying to plan a meeting with a couple of our association leaders, wanted to meet this week, and I was like, okay, I'm looking out. It's going to be 2 weeks before we can get together, and just trying to think through my week in advance to make sure, okay, well, I know I've got this as family time. So like this week for us, Tuesday night was our family night. We didn't have anything going on, so we were like, that's going to be dinner. It's going to be movie, hanging out night, and so if you can plan your week out in advance so that your week doesn't catch up with you and the tyranny of the urgent doesn't interrupt your flow, then I think that that's a big win that you can have.
Yeah. Yeah. I started calendaring a little more as best as I can, a couple days out of these are the things I need to do. I was given a book early on in ministry. I don't even have it anymore. This is probably how unhealthy our brains work. And it was about saying no to ministry. It was one of the very first books I got as I went into ministry. And I remember reading it and I was like, that'll be easy. I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have kids at the time. Like none of that stuff was a reality for my life. And so I really do think this is probably one of the areas we really struggle with in ministry is saying no and saying yes to the right things, especially saying yes to our family. So this got me thinking as I was thinking through this episode, I'm thinking back to how Paul writes to Timothy. He gives him the list of the responsibility of elders or the characteristics we need to find in elders. And one of the things he lists in there is a pastor who's able to manage his home. So why is a pastor who manages his home, why is that so important? Why does a good management of our home make us a better pastor?
I think there's two reasons. One, the list of qualifications for an elder is supposed to set an example for those within the church congregation. And so, a minister, a pastor should be setting that example for his church. So what does it mean? What does it look like to manage your household well, to be a good father, to be a good husband, to be a good employee, businessman, CEO, whatever the case may be, and a good church member. And so I think there's that aspect of it that we're setting as a model. But I think that there's also just a spiritual component of if you can't spiritually lead your family well, which is the building block of community, whether that's the church community or the society as a whole. If you can't manage that primary role of community within your own household, then how are you going to be able to manage the even more difficult, more challenging, more diverse, more possibly conflicted relationship of the church body? It's just it's kind of if you can be faithful in the small thing, then you can be faithful in the larger things. It's kind of like a stewardship thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points. Bryan, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Dustin's right. But I also, I know he's right. This is an area that for me, I constantly struggle with, am I managing my family well? It's not, doing it. It's the mindset of, am I doing it well? Am I living up to those standards? And, uh, you know, because people are watching, and how many times have you heard somebody say, "Oh, that's a pastor's kid"? They're going to get in trouble. They're either going to be really good and they're going to get, made fun of for being the goody two shoes, or they're going to be the PK. And
The PK.
The PK. Don't go near them because they're the PK. And it's and so you're in the spotlight, and so there's this constant tension in my mind of, am I doing it well enough? And recognizing that am I doing it well enough to honor God, not to please the people around me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that
I would just
go
piggybacking
ahead,
on
Dustin.
that. That doesn't mean we have to be perfect at it, because we can't be. I know there's pastors out there that have, prodigal sons, prodigal daughters, and there gets to be we're supposed to raise them in godliness, raise them in the Scripture, to love the Lord, but they still have to make their own decisions. And part of managing your household is how you manage that wayward child. How do you minister to them? How do you also hold them accountable? Because that sets an example for those within the congregation who have that similar situation.
Yeah, I was reading a job description the other day for something that because I was looking at creating a job description posting for a position we were going to fill, and they put on there, because most of them say meets the qualifications of Timothy and Titus, and this one said, I can't remember if it was strives to meet or has a strong desire to meet. And I absolutely loved the way that was worded, because it was chock full of grace, recognizing that we are human and we aren't perfect. And as long as our heart is desiring for us to do that, and I think that parlays down to our family very well. Strong desire to do whatever we can to lead our family well, but knowing if we mess up, there's going to be grace involved in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it definitely shows what we're going to walk through with our kids or within our marriage. How we manage that should be a testimony. I mean, that's what you were kind of saying, Dustin. Like we need to be an example, and so not every pastor has the picture perfect home life. They might have a kid, who's walking away or who's questioning. I'm walking through that with a friend right now. His daughter is just, denying the existence of the Lord, who wants nothing to do with it. Great man. She was raised in a Christian home. She's heard Christian teaching. She's heard the Bible. She knows the Bible. But she's at a place now where, you can't, nor do you ever want to do this. It's not where your parents, can guilt you into something or keep pushing you forward. She's at that age where she gets to pick a lot more things. Now, he's not a pastor, but still, as pastors, I don't look forward to that day, but it could be a reality. And so how I lead our church or a church member through that time is hopefully the way that I'll lead my own family and try and help them during that time as well. There's a lot of grace in that, a lot of challenge in that for sure. Um, but final thing, I just kind of pick your brains, maybe some suggestions, but have you done anything you think that has been helpful for your church to respect this balance? Has there been something that you've put into place that the church understands that this balance
I gave him a
matters?
fake phone number. That's usually that helped.
I constantly remind them, especially when it comes to my family, um, you can expect a lot more of me, but not them. And so, like, and constantly remind my family that, like, last night, my wife leads up our Wednesday night dinner crew, and she wasn't feeling good. And I said, go home, like, just go to bed. And she's like, no, no. And it wasn't that she doesn't trust the people that are on her team to do it. She felt guilty that they were doing it without her. And I had to say, no, like, you don't need to do this tonight. Go home. It's going to be fine. And that shows to them also, we can do this without the pastor and his family if we need to for a season. And so just constantly reinforcing that without being, without standing up at the pulpit saying this is how it's going to be, but just in the actions that we do. This needs to, this today, we're not going to be able to do this. And this is why. We have our big Fields of Faith for our FCA, which is a big deal in our community because we're such a small community. That's this Sunday, and Sunday morning, and it'll be prior to this releasing, but Sunday morning we host them, and they do what they're going to do at Fields of Faith in our church. I'm not going to be here this Sunday because we have a college opportunity for my daughter as she prepares to go off to college that we need to be somewhere else. And as much as I wish I could be here, her future is more important than this one day for me as the dad. And so, and they can pull it off without us. So,
yeah, I think modeling anything, going back to Paul's encouragement to Timothy, but as we're thinking through this, for the church to see you as a family ministering together, I think that there's something special in that. My kids right now, they're at the age, all three of our children are extroverts. And so they love ministry opportunities. They love to go out to Dallas Baptist University with us and talk to kids when we do some recruitment stuff out there. They enjoy that. And so I've never felt like someone kind of made it sound like we were forcing our kids. Like, no, we don't force our kids to be extroverts. That's how they were created. That's how they exist. That's where they thrive and love that type of an atmosphere. but at the same time, we tell our kids, like, we've had to teach, especially our older son, buddy, it's necessary to rest. We need to rest. We need to not have something to do. We just need to be together as a family. But then sometimes to, relay that to the church as well. But I think that I think we're a busy family, especially given, the ages of our kids and things like that. But even helping our church understand, like, there's times that we're going to get away. There's times that we need to prioritize each other.
Mhm.
There's times where the family, I might be there, but the family doesn't have to be there. Like, yes, business meetings are important, but my 3 children and my wife don't have to be at every single one of them. One of my favorite pictures that we have of our middle son, it's just his legs and feet. He's on the back pew of our sanctuary on a Sunday evening when we're in business meeting that went exceptionally long, and he's just laying down. His legs are propped over. It's the greatest,
I
like the
remember
greatest
that
BK picture ever. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, like, we forced our kids to come to something like that and they don't need it. So
Mhm.
helping our church understand that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate it, guys. Good conversation on this. You got any closing statements on all of it?
Yeah, let me just add on this last thing. I think one of the things that I have done that has helped our church understand that our ministers don't have to be at everything, and we need space is to whenever something's coming up, especially if it involves surgery, operations, funerals, things like that. Um, First of all, you don't have to be there every single time something like that happens. Literally, if somebody's on their deathbed, well, yeah, that's probably when the pastor needs to show up. And there needs to be times, and our kids know this, or my wife knows this, and they support it. There are times where I have to say, "Sorry, kids, I can't be there because this is going on, and I have to be at the church." Those don't happen often, but sometimes it does. Whenever I found, like, there was a season where we had quite a few funerals on Saturdays, and they always conflicted with a track meet or something like that. I just couldn't make it. But whenever I connected with the family beforehand, ministered to them, sat down with them if they needed to, and then I had a staff member there that was, kind of our connection point for them. Um, that went a long way. And even though I wasn't there, the presence of the pastoral ministry was there, and that presence of pastoral ministry can be there through an additional staff member, through a deacon, through a lay member that maybe not be a deacon or something like that. Maybe it's a Sunday school leader or something. You can make sure that pastoral care is taking place, even if you aren't there physically. And I think that goes a long way towards making sure you're honoring your family, but also honoring the role that we have as pastors.
Yeah.
I just think one thing that is important as your kids age and mature and get to the point that you can talk with them, it's a family conversation. Constantly reminding them, you are first. You are my priority. God's first, but you're my priority. There's going to be times, like Dustin said, I can't avoid it, but I'm going to do everything I can in my power to do that. To be at your thing, to show you that I love you, that I support you, and that first and foremost, if you have an issue in your life, I'm your dad first, and then I'm your pastor. Let's talk, and just keeping that open line. Same with your marriage, keeping that open lines of communication. I have learned very quickly when something tough is happening at the church, as much as I want to keep it from my wife for her safety, she reads it all over me, and we have to have a conversation about it, and we talk about it, and we just say, okay, this is what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen, but you just need to be aware. This is why I might be distant or in a mood or short, and just keep talking with your family, talking with your family, talking with your family, talking with your family.
And I found that my wife wants to know because she doesn't want to be caught off guard whenever somebody comes and asks her about it. So that's a way that she feels honored and respected whenever I maybe not let her know on all the details or let her know about confidential conversations, but just if there's something going on that she's going to hear about, make sure that she doesn't get caught off guard.
Yeah.
Mine wants to know, so she needs to know if she needs to practice her throat punch. But I'm kidding. She's not that way, but she wants to know. Like, this is her church family too. And there's things she does that I don't share all the details, but I'm pretty open with her about it, and because she wants to know, and how she can pray for me, and how my kids can pray for me, is important. And so I think it is okay to without going into every little minor detail, without violating trust or confidentiality, it's okay to tell your family, hey, there's some heavy stuff going on. As a family, we need to pray for our church.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate the insight. Also, thanks to those who are listening. Our hope is that we're encouraging you, providing some wisdom as you navigate the realities of pastoring. Or, I know some of you are listening, you're just seeking to come alongside your pastor in hopes of encouraging him or understanding the ministry. So we're grateful that you're listening as well. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe as well as follow on all the social media platforms at Rookie Pastors Pod, unless you're on Twitter. I'm not, or X, not Twitter, guys. Rookie Pastors Pod there. And as Dustin shared earlier, make sure to follow and enter your chance to win the month's the book giveaway that we're doing. If you're just a church member, which you're not just a church member, but if you're a church member and you win that, great. You can gift that to your pastor. Month of October being Pastor Appreciation Month. You didn't even have to spend a dime, and you got him something special. So that's great for you. But be on the lookout for our next podcast. Next one, we're going to be exploring the topic of preaching. So I look forward to that. Until then, go love your families, go love your churches, and we'll talk to you next time.
There you go.